Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Mindshift. I'm Luca, and Jonty is with me here on this call. We've got a super special episode planned for you today. We're talking today about artificial intelligence. Now, first disclaimer before we start diving into things, Jonty and I are no experts in AI, artificial intelligence. We studied business at university. We by no means are experts at all of this. And, we've just done a bit of reading, a bit of research, and we're going to put our opinions out there and just have a basic chat. Don't take what we say as, cast in stone, because we are still getting to grips with this topic, and we are still getting to know things about this. So, yeah, Jonty, good place to start would be, where have you done your research? What have you been reading this past week preparing for this?
Yeah, for me, so a lot of what sparked this kind of interest in, this technology that's changing the world in so many ways is, I actually started watching this series on YouTube a while back called The Age of AI.
Oh, I've been watching that as well this week. It's super cool.
Oh, sick, really?
It's super
then we
cool,
probably
yeah.
we can because then you'll understand some of the stuff. I did some research. A lot of what I want to talk about is some stuff in there.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I actually only watched. I got up to. I'm in the middle of episode 2 at the moment. So.
Okay.
The episode 2 was the one about healthcare, with the guy who had ALS, and then also the Indian woman who had diabetes and she was going blind. There's crazy stuff coming out of those.
I think that's actually the. Yeah, sorry. I think that's the only one I actually haven't watched.
Oh, really?
I watched all of the others. I think that one, because it started and it was quite intense. I thought it was quite okay. Yeah. So it was. I skipped those and looked at some other ones.
That's cool. We can fill in the gaps. Cool. We can fill in the gaps.
Exactly.
We can fill in the gaps with each other. Yeah.
Cool. But I really like how that's. If you're interested in AI, definitely give that a watch. And it's free to watch on YouTube.
Definitely, it's great. It's really good.
Yeah,
really well done.
It's such a good show. Pushes a lot of interesting topics, and also it's Robert Downey Jr. on the commentary. Yeah, he makes it quite interesting.
Exactly, he does. But he's also a big AI enthusiast. He wants to, after his whole, I think maybe his role as Iron Man sort of drove him to take an actual interest in AI and artificial intelligence and tech, to change the future, as Iron Man did as his character, which is really cool. So it's cool to see.
Speaking of Iron Man, interestingly, it also brings up the whole topic, which we don't have to spend too long on, but I came across quite a few articles on AI and warfare. Also, also the ethical side of that. How we don't want to dwell on war for too long, but I think the future of war is probably going to be driven largely by these drones.
Sure.
Robotic. I don't know if you saw that YouTube video of that robot soldier that was jumping around, rolling around, doing all sorts of crazy moves, and
no, I haven't seen it.
Shows where these this technology is pushing, in the robot space. But it's scary stuff as well. So
it's scary stuff, and then on the flip side, there's so much good that will come out of all of that. And I think one thing I was reading as well, and the little crash course I was doing, is basically the lecturer was, at the end of it, he was saying, this technology can be used for so many things, but I hope you can use it for good. We hope that a big use of this is for good and changing humanity in a positive way.
And we just hope that I guess this it isn't abused or used in the wrong way. Unfortunately, I think it will be. But I think I'm also very optimistic about the technology. So maybe we focus more on the optimistic side.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I agree with you. So let's start. What do you from what you've read and this week, what is your broad definition of artificial intelligence? Just to fill in people listening.
In a very simple way of putting it, it's computers becoming smart. So essentially, it's, yeah, I mean, a more technical definition would be it's the simulation of intelligent behavior in computers. But, ideally it's, can the computers essentially start thinking for themselves?
Yes, I agree.
And of course, there are like different subsets of AI. There's, like machine learning, deep learning. I saw a couple others, but I didn't really dive too deep into that. I more wanted to look at the more application side of it. So, the programming side and all that, definitely not an expert on that.
No. I don't think, look, we're definitely not going to be diving into code and all of that stuff. Maybe what I was thinking is that we should do another episode, maybe a few months down the line, when maybe we have done a crash course in the code behind it, and then we can start getting a bit more technical.
Exactly.
But for now, it'll be good to just keep it high level.
Also, just on that topic, so I have signed up. So there are these online courses from Harvard that are for free on edX, and I've signed up for an AI course, but I'm first doing the CS50 course. So I want to understand a little bit of basic programming.
And that's computer science. That's computer science, you were saying.
Yeah, computer science course from Harvard. So it's amazing. Like just I suppose a bit of a side point, the technology. I mean, who would have ever thought we could be doing free from Harvard halfway across the world? And so it's very, very interesting times we find ourselves in.
No, it's different. I think what we'll do is we'll also maybe link the link to EDX in the description for anyone who wants to dive in. But I can't say how cool it is actually to just go on my laptop from home and do 3-4 hours of AI through a website, which is so cool. And it's I mean, there's so many resources to take advantage of and to diversify your knowledge. Especially. So I mean,
also just, I suppose, okay, moving on a little bit, but I think also just speaking on AI and computers becoming intelligent, I think what's awesome and scary at the same time is like 10-20 years ago, movies like the Terminator or and this dystopian future, we all think of like robots going against humans, or robots being becoming like an all-knowing intelligent being.
Exactly. We can do some myth busting. We can do some myth busting right now. And
I mean, so interestingly, like maybe there are two sides to it. Some people are like, the future is like this AI that becomes this super intelligent being, but there are other people who say like we essentially they will just be like almost programmed by us, and they'll be able to do just like the repetitive tasks. Like, will they ever be able to have programmed like empathy or human emotion into these kind of I guess robots or AI?
I mean, I actually read an interesting article was saying actually talking exactly about this. How do you get consciousness into computers? And basically the article was saying that right now, given the technology we have, it's impossible to sort of develop consciousness into a computer, given the the microchips we're using right now and the computer processors. The article and the professor that was being quoted was basically saying that we would have to re-engineer the computers completely to simulate anything close to the human brain. And I think a lot of the studies that have been done is that just come to the conclusion that say the human brain is way more complex than we actually understand. So to get anything close to consciousness where we feel emotion and we can read body language and stuff like that, it's going to take years and years and years. I mean, and I think that's why
we don't even understand the full effect or like how the brain works completely.
That's the point. Yeah, exactly.
But I think also what's interesting about AI is that it opens up the opportunity for rapid and like exponential like drive in the like the rates of technology or the way that it's moving forward, because suddenly you got computers that can think like so much faster than that we can. Like I don't want to throw any numbers out there, but we know how fast computers are, and so the power of AI is just its ability to do things so much faster than what humans can. And I mean, we're even seeing now, like one of the biggest uses of AI is, being able to find patterns in large amounts of data and being able to use it to make sense of data that previously it would have taken, years to do. And I mean, quite a topical and relevant thing is how they're using AI now to come up or help the speed of finding a vaccine for the coronavirus.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
And they're using AI to look at basically the molecular or protein level of these certain viral makeups. I'm not too sure on the science behind it, but essentially it's like suggesting parts or things that can be used to help this vaccine moving forward, which is amazing. And also just like scouring through thousands and thousands of research papers and looking for relevant information to help and fight this coronavirus. So it's it's
exactly. And like while we're talking about health, that episode that I was watching from the Age of AI about healthcare I found it so amazing how especially, so there was this Indian woman who basically had diabetes, and because what can happen when you have diabetes is obviously your blood sugar levels are extremely volatile, and basically what happened in her retina, she had blood leaks which were causing her to go blind. And the situation in India was that basically there was the ratio of patients who need consultation and help for eye problems was something like 20 times more, like 200 times more than the amount of eye doctors there actually were in India, basically. Something crazy like that. So basically what they were trying to do is, basically, I think, I'm trying to remember who, but basically Google helped DeepMind, who's basically a subsidiary of Google, helped develop this AI tool that, obviously it's a simple machine learning algorithm that basically, and for what a machine learning algorithm does, for people who haven't actually learned what it does, it basically takes an input and processes it to get an output. So what this application was doing was it took tons of data. This algorithm learned from tons of data of what normal retinas look like and what diseased retinas look like. So then it can take a scan of the patient's retina, put it through this algorithm. That's your input, the picture of the patient's retina, and then an output whether this person has a disease or is fine. So basically it helped it decreased the waiting time drastically, and basically saved tons of patients from becoming blind, because the system was so slow before without the AI that people would have to wait 3 months, for example, something like a month or a few weeks, for their feedback from their doctor, whether they needed help on their eyes or not. And this algorithm told them exactly at the real time whether they needed help or whether they needed laser surgery for their eyes. And this actually saved the woman from becoming blind, which is like an insane application, and I mean it's like, it's quite a simple thing when you think about it.
Exactly. I mean, that's just one of my points about AI is it can improve our lives, and just open up a whole new door of opportunities. And also on that point, was this relating to the same thing where the AI beat the doctors at identifying like cases, or was this?
I think so. Well, it definitely did, because basically what it did was it told it could see in real time, like right then and there, that okay, this retina has certain blood leaks, and this is going to lead to blindness based on the data that the algorithm had been trained on. Whereas the doctor would have had to take the picture, done certain tests, and it would have taken a couple of weeks. So I mean, they were beating the doctors by miles.
Sure.
And obviously, I mean, obviously, maybe this is an important segue for maybe people who are a bit unfamiliar with how this whole thing works, is that a machine learning algorithm like this is, trained and developed by being fed data. And I think maybe we can segue into the whole chat about data and how important that's going to be. And, I think these modern technology companies run on data, because if you think about a company like Facebook, their algorithms are running on our data, and the output for them is, what ads we see, based on our data. So data, I'm sure you've heard that that quote, Jonty, that data is going to become the next oil as another.
Yeah, the next valuable commodity.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is already.
Yeah, I mean, all these companies, especially the future, which is, you need a large basis of data for your AIs or your technologies to become better and be, actually get valuable information. So I think, data is certainly a commodity. It's spoken of as almost going to be a commodity of the future.
Exactly.
And then also with that comes around all the ethical debates of what data are they allowed to gather, and like how can they gather it. And
exactly,
I suppose that brings up the whole Cambridge Analytica case that happened with Facebook and everything a while back. But I mean, more like just on those points of algorithms and data, I mean, it's like if we think of entertainment and things like YouTube or Instagram or Netflix, like these AIs or these algorithms are picking up what we like most. It's almost improving our I guess our entertainment experience.
Our experience, exactly.
Yeah, which is another point that I wanted to bring on about AI.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean,
I mean,
so many things.
Yeah, and what's a crazy point, what, now that you brought that up, is that, I always thought, I guess before I was more educated on this, is I always thought as AI as, the Terminator dystopian future, Skynet, and anyone who's seen Avengers as well, Ultron waking up and then he's like awake and he knows everything and he's like a sentient robot and stuff.
Yeah.
And like I always thought of that extreme, and I think as we've discussed already, we're quite far off from that reality. Elon Musk doesn't really think so, but a lot of the AI community I've been reading disagrees with him and says that we are maybe a long way off. We don't know, but it's crazy to think that AI is something as simple as a back-end algorithm that's running on Netflix and seeing what you are watching, and then pushes, that's its input data.
Yeah.
That is taking what you are watching, and then it pushes back the output, what it thinks you will like to watch. And most of the time, don't you find it's right as well? Like,
it's right. And
it's crazy to think that that's AI, that's a certain AI that's working right in front of your eyes.
Exactly. And in things that almost everyday things we just take for granted. But an interesting point on these algorithms, a little bit of a side topic, which maybe in another episode we can dive on deeper with understanding social media. But my sister the other day coined this term, these echo rooms. And essentially what these algorithms are doing is they're just feeding us the things that we like, and it's giving us the same things. So what's happening is we trapped in this certain space where we're only getting fed what we like or what we are, I guess, prone to, or our biases, what we prefer.
Yes.
And
okay.
essentially what that's doing is that it's not opening us up to the other side of the arguments, or other kind of information or shows or things that are going to maybe push and challenge what we believe. And
it's like reinforcing your views.
Basically. Yeah, your views or your preferences, and it's not exposing you to I suppose other things which can almost like broaden your thinking, or give you like, I guess, not get you stuck in the same place. So it's an interesting topic actually.
Well, I mean, if I can jump in actually and like put a practical example to this, for anyone who has a partner, girlfriend or boyfriend, and you both have a separate profile on Netflix, I literally think this is a perfect example of this. Go and look at your partner's profile on Netflix and compare it to yours. I've done that with Kerry, my girlfriend, and done that, and literally the content is like completely different, according to our preferences, obviously. And
exactly.
I think where does this content come from? Like, I didn't even know Netflix has this stuff, but like you say, Jonty, you watch a certain thing and then Netflix will push the same sort of thing to you again, so you get stuck in that whole
exactly. I mean, so I guess that's looking at a more negative side of these algorithms picking, but I mean, maybe the future algorithms will be, I suppose, more efficient and push certain things as well. So that you're not only stuck in I suppose your certain beliefs or
Exactly. And I think that's a challenge. Another segue is like eliminating, and I was watching a lot of TED Talks this week as well about, which is a massive issue, eliminating bias in these algorithms. How do you take out human bias? Because obviously we the ones programming these things, we the ones developing. And to an extent, I sort of viewed it as that we are projecting our own or putting our own self and our own consciousness into these algorithms, and then our views are sort of playing out in those algorithms and how they act. So in a simple sort of example is that humans developed the Google algorithm that when you search for a certain keyword, it pushes images, or like when you're doing an image search, when you put in a word, it comes back with certain images. And basically the issue is that some biases actually come through in these algorithms, like, when you search CEO, that mainly men, images of men are shown, which is a massive problem. And in today's society, you don't want to be portraying the fact that only men can be CEOs. And then when you search personal assistant, mostly women come up, which is a massive problem. So I think,
is that the case?
I think it has been the case, and I think Google's been working insanely hard to eliminate those sort of biases from data. But I think, maybe not as explicit, but that has been an issue in the past. And I think something like, I'm trying to think, so here's an example is, when you're applying for like a bank loan, and obviously if your data is being fed through some algorithm at the bank, and to help develop your credit score to assess whether the bank should give you that loan or not, what they were finding is what they mentioned in the TED Talk. What they were finding is that sometimes for, say, like light-skinned versus dark-skinned individuals, or maybe a lower income household, or basically the algorithm was discriminating against the person's gender or race or something, and computing a certain credit score. So basically, dark, for example, I'm not saying this is true or anything, but I'm saying, for example, something came out that dark skin, something would have come out that was saying that dark-skinned people are less likely to repay their loan than a light-skinned person. That's true, but certain biases were coming through like that. So I think a massive challenge for us, if we, and I know this is a business podcast, so we want to always bring it back to business and how, and entrepreneurship, how we can relate to it, is if we are the ones developing AI and we the ones running businesses where we develop AI, is a big challenge for us then is to eliminate any of our biases and be aware of our own biases as we develop this technology and as we take it further into our own businesses.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be important, and I wonder how that's going to be done.
Well, I mean, a lot of the, obviously then those are the issues, and a lot of the speakers provided solutions. So I think from an outset, having diverse data, not limiting your data to, only certain areas of your city or certain genders, certain races. Having a diverse data set will allow the algorithm, to my understanding, to learn more diversely, gain more of a worldly experience.
And I suppose that comes back to your point earlier on, then I suppose the value that data is going to have.
Exactly.
And I mean,
and how you utilize data.
I mean, talking on that, it's so important, and I guess it kind of makes me think of Tesla a little bit, is because they've almost had this first mover advantage where they've been the first proper like self-driving car on the road, and they've had extra time to gather the data and for the I guess the AI to become more complex, and more efficient because
Exactly.
it's spending more time, and so that's another interesting space, I guess. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
I mean,
I haven't read up enough maybe to dive into about, but I think, maybe we can dive into it in a future AI episode.
yeah, I
I
mean,
think,
also, so on the age of AI, one of the later videos was actually how this company's pushing to get these self-driving trucks. And I think,
oh yeah,
the message that it kind of brought from the episode was that, we are kind of far off from potentially having these self-driving trucks. Because I mean, it's the AI, like, it's so hard for it to learn because there are so many variables or things that could change or go
exactly.
wrong almost, that the truck or these self-driving AIs have to learn. I mean, because the issue with with the driving is that people are irrational. So people do irrational things. So how can they program the AI to learn that drivers are going to do, I suppose, silly things? So I
To
think,
almost expect the unexpected, like how do you train the algorithm to expect the unexpected? And it's almost like
exactly, yeah,
you fed it data to sort of learn something that might to anticipate something that might happen. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like a weird
it's
concept.
it's so weird. But I mean, that episode of the Age of I was called, I think it was something along the lines like, will AI steal our jobs or take our
Oh
jobs in the future?
yes, yes.
And I think,
Super
so I
interesting.
think this is an interesting topic that
Yeah.
I would like to
But John
speak
T,
on now.
John T first. So
Yeah,
while we're still on the self-driving cars and self-driving trucks, we were talking about Tesla. I think
yeah,
it's a good time to then jump in, and obviously that's explain maybe my obviously a lot of the course I did was learning the different uh, sort of facets of AI, and obviously self-driving cars employ a different sort of artificial intelligence versus say something like Netflix does, where Netflix's algorithm is maybe a simple machine learning algorithm which takes an input A to an output B, and it's sort of a
yeah,
straight, if you can imagine, like a straight line.
yeah,
Whereas, to explain it more, is self-driving cars and self-driving trucks will be using more deep learning and employing neural networks. Um,
hmm,
and what those are, if you can imagine, like basically a human brain, but way more simple. Basically, taking from this is from my understanding, what I learned this week is that a neural network then takes multiple inputs and feeds multiple outputs. And
hmm,
obviously, you can develop business applications for this, on developing a neural network. But I think a
yeah,
self-driving car is easy to understand because you know that there's multiple variables that affect how you drive. There's the there's the position of other cars. There's traffic lights. There's road signs. There's weather. There's certain objects on the side of the road. That there's
hmm,
so much input that has to go through the self-driving car algorithm to be able for it to drive properly.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, and I mean, a neural network is basically an intertwined route, or like if you imagine how like gray matter is formed, and all of these inputs get thrown into that, and an output comes out the other side for how this
Hmm.
thing can drive.
I think, yeah. So the neural network and all that stuff, they also use that for Baby X in one of the episodes,
Yes,
where
yes,
the guy's trying
the
to
first one,
develop, I suppose, it's
the
called effective
simulation.
computing. Yeah,
Yeah,
where it's they're trying to simulate human emotion or program this baby to be,
yeah.
I
Which is
suppose, its own
seriously creepy.
consciousness.
I found it. I don't know about you. I found it seriously creepy. Like,
Yeah.
and they made that simulation of Will I Am as well, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and they like showed it back to him, and I just thought my mind was just going off on a tangent, and I thought like, and what really hit home, what sent me on the tangent was when Will I Am was like, it's good, he wants to do it for like to develop something beyond himself and to leave something behind in the world, past
Yeah.
past when he leaves the world, when he dies. And he was saying, but when is it too far? And the episode is titled quite aptly, "How far is too far?" Basically,
Yeah.
because he was saying like, is there going to be a point where you won't be able to tell the difference between his simulation and him? And he was like, and he
Sure.
basically said, no, he basically said, I don't want to get it to that point because I don't want my mom to be confused between me and my simulation, which is
Sure.
like,
That's scary.
it's like a scary thing to actually think about. And I mean, these
Yeah.
guys in New Zealand were there. They were simulating a baby that was learning from, me speaking to the computer. It was learning from me and learning that maybe a spider is scary and a duck is not, I found it seriously creepy. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I mean, that's scary. And I mean, I suppose that it seems so like futuristic and
Yeah.
like unattainable. But what's scary is that we're sitting here and we can almost debate these things that seem almost impossible. And like, it doesn't seem impossible anymore. And I think
exactly.
that's what's really, I mean, it's awesome, but it's also scary.
Exactly. It is.
Yeah. But anyway, I suppose, so if we can move on to the topic about the jobs of the future.
Yes. Yeah.
It's an interesting.
That'll
It's
be
an
a good
interesting
segue. That'll be a good segue into like the more business side of things, and maybe we can debate sort of that.
I mean, so I think, we've heard it a lot, like repetitive jobs, back office jobs, like accounting, things that are very, very repetitive are going to be taken away. And I think also, which we're already seeing in like the car industry, is robots taking from, manual labor. And I think, I suppose we can be scared that, or like, certain jobs are going to be taken away, but at the same time, we are also so optimistic, and I suppose, like, imagine how many new jobs like AI is going to create. So there are two sides to the story, but especially for us, like we living in South Africa, or well, you've moved to London now, but I mean, what worries me is like, how is this AI going to affect, developing nations, and a lot of low wage manual labor jobs that are potentially going to, disappear in the future. And, at what, like, what's like, what are the strategies, I guess, to overcome these worries of the future? Because at the same time, Africa and South Africa, we need these technologies to stay competitive and relevant, I guess, as part of being a part of the global economy. So, I mean, what do you
it's
think
like you're balancing staying economically competitive with, uplifting society and making sure full employment is a thing.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Because I mean, inequality is a huge issue here, and like, at what point will we say like AI maybe is AI going to maybe make that inequality worse? That's like a question. Or is it going to be something that, drives economic growth and creates new jobs that potentially can improve the economy? And I think it's a scary thing to think about, I guess. And at what point is like government going to have to step in and regulate certain technologies,
I
or
think,
say,
I think there has to be a sort of not a symbiosis, but like a harmony between government and the private sector, in ensuring that these technologies are utilized in the correct way, and that things are rolled out in the correct way, in because obviously the government has a priority to ensure that society is looked after and being empowered, whereas the private sector may be searching for profit in certain aspects.
Exactly.
But I think I think there also needs to come a point where there's regulation and policy that sort of regulates this whole thing, and I definitely don't have enough knowledge to dive in what policy should be made, but it needs to flow down from government, in my opinion, to private sector. And I think also then the companies of the future will then have to have solid policies saying that we value and values of valuing humans and human interaction, and not prioritizing machines over humans, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose it's going to be hard though, because as technology improves and increases at such a fast rate, the cost also decreases. And so I suppose at what point, and I suppose this is where like corporate social responsibility comes in and everything, because at what point is a company going to say, because it's going to be hard for companies to remain competitive if competitors are I suppose using these technologies and cutting, labor and everything. And I mean, labor is expensive. That's for a lot of companies, that could be, some of their biggest expenses. And so if, these technologies come along, which we're already seeing, like in the car industry, these robots, and, like in also in the age of AI, we see where these robots are being used, or these AIs to, I suppose, do farming and like pick the fruits, and they use computer vision to identify, these fruits, or vegetables in this, it's like peppers and tomatoes, and they can actually tell when the fruit's ripe and pick it. And these are going to become like these greenhouses that are almost completely automated and super efficient and optimized. And so at what point do you say, like in a developing country here where agriculture is like a big part of our economy, and it employs a lot of people, I mean, like, it's just
John,
a scary thought.
Yeah, it is a scary thought. I think my take on it is, and from what I've consumed this week, is a lot of, it came up so many times in TED Talks, and I think it was a lot, it is a massive issue. And I think maybe a lot of the, people maybe do focus on the fear and, the threat that this technology can have to jobs, and yes, the studies have been done that, there were studies done by PwC and McKinsey that I read about that basically said X amount of jobs, I can't remember the number, I'll have to look it up, X amount of jobs are going to be eliminated by 2030 because of AI and technology. But then on the flip side, if you flip the coin, Y amount of jobs are going to be created. And that was actually more based on their survey, more than their jobs that they were going to be eliminated. So exactly, if you look from that perspective, and I believe it is that this technology is going to create a lot more jobs than we think. And there's going to be certain roles that we haven't even defined yet that will come up.
Yeah. And I suppose just on that point, that's why I think it's easy, because we can look at what it's going to change currently. We know which jobs are going to disappear, but we don't know, I suppose, which jobs are going to be created. And I suppose that's why it's easy to focus on what we know, and I suppose be scared. But at the same time, I mean, we don't even know what this is going to create.
Exactly.
But it's definitely,
And also coming back to the point about the greenhouse and agriculture and how it's such a big part of South Africa's economy. I believe, and from what I've consumed this week, and from what I've looked at, what I've been thinking about, is that I actually now think that, humans are going to play such a big part, and I don't think you're going to have some sort of corporate office where, robots are just going to be walking around and doing functions of the company. I think that technology will always be an enabler, as long as we are as long as we are in control of it. And I think we are in control of it for at least, maybe in our lifetime. I can't speak for the distant future, but I think for now, if you're employing technologies like these amazing technologies that are helping pick out, ripe fruits. And also there was that one startup that got acquired by John Deere a couple of years ago, I think, who basically, it was an algorithm that can identify weeds versus actual plants, and obviously helps in keeping crops alive. But I think that someone like farmers, maybe they won't find themselves driving the tractor in the future. For example, I think the farmers will be, behind a screen and telling the tractor what to do, because they will have the industry knowledge and the knowledge of how to do all of this stuff. But their job is just going to be done more efficiently by this machine. And I think they're going to be the ones driving the algorithm, with the help of some software engineer and a data scientist, maybe who's optimizing the data and giving insights. Their creativity and their farming expertise is going to be used in another way, not necessarily him sitting on the tractor and drive. I don't know. I think that's just my opinion and my take.
I mean, this is the point that they raise in that episode. Like, will AI take our jobs? And they say the future is a perfect blend of computer and human.
Exactly.
We add something that the computer can't, which is, like you say, these certain, I suppose, these expertise and skills and empathy and things that maybe the computers can't. And that's, the future is a mix of that. But, interesting, just talking on farming, I mean, and what this episode speaks to is that, these AI or robots can actually use computer vision to see light that we can't see. So like ultraviolet light and infrared.
Yes.
And they can actually identify things that we couldn't see. And like, I know there's, using like drones to analyze crops and see where certain crops are maybe at risk of certain disease, or they're dying, or they're not getting enough water. And, we're already seeing this combination of using, I suppose, AI and humans, which is so interesting, I think. And I think that's, like exactly your point. I think the future is one where there's going to be a perfect mix of using AI and humans. And I mean, the things that it will create from that. I mean, so like also some people think, what's the future could potentially be such that technology and everything, I guess, eliminates or becomes so cheap that, certain things that we never dreamt of being, like free or cheap, could now become possible. Because they, like certain like foods in the future, who knows, like it could become free because the technology just makes it so easy for these things to be produced. So I mean, who knows?
No, exactly, who knows? And I think my my take on it is that there's also the debate, just an aside, about there was actually a study done. I got told about it. I can't give you exact details, but I basically and I would have to look up as well how true this actually is that someone said that there was a study done about electricity supply, and they reckon in the next 10 to 15 years, that electricity could become so cheap that it's basically like freely accessible to everyone. And like, because there's going to be so much supply, and it all stems from the advances in technology and everything. But yeah, that's just an interesting aside. I think my take on this whole thing is that I think we are gonna, as people and as, future business owners and future employees and, playing a big role in organizations and the business world, is we are gonna have to be tasked, in my opinion, with becoming more human than ever. Because as the future progresses, we're going to become so intertwined with this technology. And already, like, we are so interlinked with this thing already, like the phone, and it enables so much of our lives. And people say we like cyborgs already, because we talk to each other through computers, and we talk to each other through phones, and we have earphones in our ears all the time. But I just think that we're gonna have to double down on being human, and being in touch with our emotions, and being being human towards each other. And
and I mean,
as the machines take over efficiency, we're gonna have to take a step back and it's like all those buzzwords: think critically, and creativity, and all of that sort of thing.
And I mean, that's a great future, and I suppose an optimistic way of looking at it. And I think also an interesting book that I recommend is just on this topic of like the future and everything. It's called Foresight by John Sinai, and he has some very interesting, like I guess, looks into the future and what will look like. And he also, speaks about that human side and that importance. But I mean, also like just how radical the future is going to be. It's going to be so different. And he even raises this thing how we won't buy cars. We'll essentially get a car, and then we'll pay it off by just letting people use it like Uber, or because you'll get the car, and then when you go to sleep at night, your car will go off and drive people around.
So
you'll earn some money.
There'll be like a fixed supply of cars where you just like jump in a free one when you need one.
Yeah, exactly. And all cars will be self-driving, and he goes into other stuff like where we won't even have to go shopping, because our fridges will have a system built into it that will predict or be able to tell when we need new food, and then we'll order food, but the food will come by a drone and like deliver it into like I suppose like deliver it to our house. So I mean, there's so many like, and this is all using, I guess, AI and certain technologies, and I guess it's a very exciting thing, I guess, to look forward to. And you
Yeah, and
can
I
be
think
so optimistic, which is about the
I
future.
think John Sane as well as a person, I've consumed a bit of his content and seen him on social media, and I think he's very much the person that, and John T, maybe this comes through in his book, and definitely the sort of things he's putting out there is that he's very much a futurist,
Exactly.
and he's also maybe an optimist, because that sounds really cool. That the thing I would really enjoy just walking outside and hopping in a car and then it drops me
Yeah.
off somewhere and it goes off again. And I think, in terms of business and how things are going to go in the future, maybe everyone needs to employ a bit of futurist thinking and just be awake to opportunities. And, like the internet, when the internet rolled around and, social media started coming up, I think the early adopters, I've definitely had done a lot of consuming of those guys who jumped on the bandwagon early and just being awake to those opportunities. And there's going to be a ton more opportunities. So many of the TED talks that I was watching, so many of the talks that I was watching were saying that we've only just scratched the surface. This thing is so young, if you actually think about it. The internet's only 30 years old. The internet's only 30 years old. And
look how far we've come
look how far we've come. Exactly. So yeah, I'm definitely, I for one am excited about the future.
Yeah, me too. And I guess,
also,
like you said, just more.
I think also a cool thing we'll be starting to go into, like, how can we, talking about how do you think we can employ, if we were to start a business, how would we employ AI, and how would we sort of utilize it? Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of content that I consumed this week about, how you build an organization around AI, and I think it'll be quite valuable to people who maybe aren't studying computer science or haven't had much experience. I think, and these are people like me as well. I mean, I don't really have much experience in technology, and I've just consumed it from afar. So far, and I definitely want to become more clued up. I think that you're not done for, as a business owner. I think it comes back to collaborating with people, and you are going to have to, as a business owner, if you're creating a business, if you being involved in AI projects or technology projects, you're going to have to collaborate with people, and we've spoken a ton about this already.
And
on
people value that human connection. So that's something that's, people are always going to value, I guess. But interesting on that topic as well, what they're showing is that customer satisfaction surveys are preferring like AI to those from like a call center from a person, like in some circumstances. So, I mean, but like at the same time, some people, I guess, value human interaction, but also what they say in the age of AI is that even people in old age homes value the connection, even from these robots that they have. And
yes, so, I saw it briefly. I guess it depends on the aspect or the perspective of the interaction. I guess if you're calling into a call center, I mean, I can say for myself is that, if I'm calling into a call center, I love the efficiency of talking to an automated bot or chatbot or whatever. And, being on a website and being able to just type in some text and saying, I have this problem, and then, okay, cool, this is your solution. It's really cool.
But what I also wanted to bring on a little bit now is the whole topic, or one of the episodes speaks to how AI can be used to, I guess, almost, some people say, like, save the human race. And it speaks to like the whole goal of getting people to Mars by 2033. And the episode's basically on these space architects and how essentially before we get to Mars, we can't get there and start building. We're going to need a civilization there already. So the whole plan is to come up with a way to build everything before they arrive. And basically they use AI to basically firstly come up with like the best possible way to it suggests, like, AI actually suggests like the most optimal designs. And essentially these they're going to send these robots to Mars before they people get there, and they're going to build
crazy,
the
yeah.
civilization. And these AI is going to have to basically like understand what it's doing and become self-aware of the process, because when certain errors like happen, it's going to have to like
Improvise and
improvise, exactly. And it's so
yeah.
basically they're trying to program what the architects are thinking into the system.
Jeez, that's
but it's just crazy, like
that
this,
is
you know,
crazy.
these are the kind of reaches that this technology is going to.
Out of interest, Jonty, what out of interest, what, you know, did they mention at all? I'm still going to watch the episode anyway, but what mention do they make to what sort of data they're feeding this algorithm, like about what, like Mars and space, and like I assume this algorithm and this technology has to sort of know what is in space and what is space, and like what are the conditions it's going to be encountering, and to sort of learn. Right?
I suppose what it does, because it speaks about basically the AI allows, so you use to come up with these ideas, it basically allows it to study millions of options and compare these iterations next to each other. So it can look at, you know, it can see how it's going to, like, this design will stand against like certain environmental issues. Like, I mean, we know Mars, like the temperature issues, they're going to be storms, it's going to be crazy environment. So AI basically allows it to simulate all these different situations and then compare like what would be the best structure. Whereas, you know, imagine how long that would take,
of course,
to come up with.
So I guess it's
and then
inputs,
on top of that,
its inputs in the system would be like, you know, the weather conditions on Mars, the terrain, stuff like that, and obviously quantify those. So it can then say, okay, from an engineering perspective, this sort of design would work optimally on Mars for a building or whatever.
Which is very interesting. I mean, like, imagine like humans wouldn't be able to do that as quickly. And I suppose that's like, again, back to the efficiency that AI brings in the sifting through data and all the possible ways it can be used. And then on top of that, use, I suppose, AI to an AI controlled 3D printer then to go and build this civilization before we get there. And
I mean,
that's amazing, like mind-blowing stuff.
It is.
And I mean, other episodes,
I wanted to ask a weird question, just which is off tangent. If if Elon Musk was selling tickets to Mars in the next 5 years, would you buy one, and would you go?
No, not personally. This is my personal opinion. I'd say like, like, I mean, we worried about.
Sorry. Also, it was a one-way ticket, eh? Like you going, and you're going to be the civilizer. You're going to be like the initiators on Mars. So you're going to be the civilization that starts it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Personally, I love too much of what's here on Earth, and this is just my opinion. I know like they want to go there because they're worried, like if Earth, you know, gets destroyed or whatever, it saves the civilization. But I mean, I think we got a perfectly working world here. Like, why don't we look at solving like problems here, like global warming, rather than moving us to Mars? But I suppose it's just my opinion. Like, maybe I'm not well researched, maybe, but that's just an opinion.
No, look, no. Of course, look, my opinion is that I'm still grappling with it in my mind, because I watched a documentary with about Elon Musk and SpaceX the other day, and I just started thinking, like, you know, if they were jetting off in the next 2 or 3 years and they were selling tickets, would I go? I'm still debating. I think I'll give an update soon once I get my answer.
No, but I'd miss the ocean and I guess hiking and all the nice beautiful things that Earth has to offer. But I mean, I suppose like I just want to like speak to a couple more of the cool like tech stuff that I suppose AI has used.
Go for it.
From the age of AI also, which I really recommend everyone must watch who's listening. But I mean, also there's this whole prosthetic hand. They call it the Skywalker hand, and it's like a 3D printed hand.
Yes, I've seen
this guy used, and it uses like ultrasound technology, and these high frequency sound waves can capture live images from inside the body, and it can essentially understand what his intention is for moving, so it can look at what he's trying to do, and then it can actually move the hand. It's the most advanced prosthetic hand.
Well, basically,
the AI basically uses the AI just uses machine learning to predict these patterns. So that's how the AI comes in, which is really cool. Sorry,
it's also something to do with his. Obviously, you still have your muscles that trigger your finger to start moving. The AI, I think it also basically took data from his muscles, the leftover muscles on his arm.
Yeah.
Because obviously his arm was severed at about, his elbow or something. The AI can detect the muscle moving, and then
Exactly.
it transmits that to the prosthetic finger, thumb,
And it can predict, like, I guess, the patterns to and then realize, like, when it's this, or when the muscle's moving this way, or the AI, it can detect
exactly
what then is the best, like, movement. So I suppose it learns, and it then gets better with time, which is really cool.
It's crazy.
And that's a basic form of machine learning.
Mm.
We spoke about Baby X, but I mean also the Notco company that's looking at basically creating foods that, like, taste like meat and look like meat. Basically, they have the same texture and taste, but it makes it up from plants. And basically what happens is this AI looks at the molecular makeup of foods and then creates, like, a list of ingredients from the basic building blocks of, like, these foods, and then, like, uses machine learning from this data to go and then recreate foods, or suggest like, I guess, the ingredients to create these foods that taste like meat and, have the same texture as meat. It's just crazy. Like,
Jesus,
and I suppose it goes
crazy.
back to this whole molecular makeup, which I was saying earlier, of how we're using, I suppose, AI to come up for a vaccine, where it was looking at the viral protein structures and then suggesting, like, I guess, components to be used in vaccines. So it's kind of similar concept, but I guess this time used for food. And I suppose, the whole argument with global warming and meat consumption, I guess the future maybe of food, because meat production has such an effect on global warming and everything, like, this is another way, I guess, of or a substitute to that. And I mean, just crazy what this technology can do.
It is crazy. I love to think about, I'm someone who, like, I look at these sort of things and I hear about that, telling me it's absolutely amazing. But I'm always someone who wants to then dive deeper and be like, okay, with the food thing, what do they, how does it actually work? What's the data? What is the data they're feeding this algorithm? And, and then I'm always someone who wants to go deeper. So deeper than that, that algorithm, how do you code it? And so I think that's what drives a lot of my curiosity and why I'm
that's awesome.
into all these courses, and why I'm trying to educate myself a lot. I find it super cool
and I suppose we'll understand it better once we've done more of these program or courses we're planning to do on AI and programming and everything.
Exactly. I mean, even understanding how these big social media platforms, how their algorithms work, and where they're pulling the data from, what are the inputs, and understanding, like, what are the inputs and the outputs into their machine learning algorithms, and how they're pushing ads to us. And I really enjoyed looking at that. I think that's how you sort of garner curiosity. And
exactly.
but it's crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff that that's coming out of this thing. And I think they're gonna, it's such far reaching implications to broader society and solving problems. And I think the main thing to come out of this whole chat, if any, is that this technology should be used to solve problems, be that problem getting to Mars, or be that problem, solving global warming. I think the technology is going to have far-reaching solutions, a huge impact on the world, which is super important.
I suppose, in conclusion then, are you an optimist or a pessimist,
I'm definitely an optimist. Always have been an optimist, always will be. I think, and it comes back, I think, to close then maybe on that point, is that I'm definitely an optimist, but then I think there needs to be a certain level of accountability on humans to bring forth that reality of an optimistic future, and not to use this, as
not
Google,
to use it to their selfish gain.
Exactly. As Google's old motto was when the company was first launched. Because I think, the more you think about it, I think Larry Page and Sergey Brin, they realized the power of the business and the algorithm that they were, and Google, that they were, they realized the power of this thing that they were building. So their motto was do no evil. do no evil. So I think that's a really good sort of motto to take into the future with this technology.
Yeah, and let's
and I think to just build human,
that happens.
at the core, human society, a human society and a human organization. I think we're going to have to double down on being that. And I also, sorry, last thing, Jonty, before we get to you, is I wanted to just touch on, how I watched this TED talk as well about how we can build human organizations and a human society. And basically, I'm not going to dive into the whole thing, but it was about basically tapping into what makes us human. Making sure that we are doing the unnecessary, random acts of kindness, creating intimacy within the organizations, beyond just business to business meetings or high level, shallow meetings, actually creating intimacy and social connections with the people of these organizations.
Yeah.
And remaining incomplete, where technology can where an AI algorithm can be complete and just runs a self-driving car completely, and that's its purpose. I think as humans, we need to remain incomplete, constantly searching for improvement. And that just really hit home with me. And I sort of understand now why he did that talk and sort of where this whole thing fits in. Our purpose is to be more human in a world sort of run by machines, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And for you, are you a pessimist or optimist?
Yeah, I think you summed it up so well there. Pessimist, optimist, sorry. But, the responsibility is going to lie with us to make sure that we use the technology for good, and that we don't forget about, the part of the population that maybe will not benefit from the technology potentially. So hopefully it can free up more resources to help, the poor and the people
agree with you.
who might not be included in this fast moving new economy. And so, yeah, I think, it's going to free up more time to be creative and potentially just make things available that we would never have dreamed of. So I'm very excited for the future, and hopefully the human race uses it for good.
Hey everyone, before you go, I just wanted to jump in here and say, on behalf of Jonty and myself, thank you so much for watching that episode. We really, really appreciate it. If you enjoyed that episode of Mindshift, check out some of our others. They should be around here somewhere on the screen. Also, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like for the YouTube algorithm. If you didn't like it somehow, leave me a comment down below telling me why, and I will do my utmost to make sure you enjoy it the next time. Till the next Mindshift, bye for now.